We acknowledge that Tri-Cities Community Television operates on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coquitlam First Nation. We thank the Coquitlam who continue to live on these lands and care for them along with the waters and all that is above and below. Welcome to Tri-Cities Community Television. I'm your host, Cathy, and we're here at the Poirier Library, and we would like to thank them for donating this space to us today. We continue our election series with Paul Lambert in the studio today, running for mayor. He recently announced that he was running for mayor of Port Moody. Welcome to the studio, Paul. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Cathy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right into it. Why are you running for Port Moody mayor?
Yeah, so my wife and I live in Heritage Woods, and so next year our eldest is going to go to Aspenwood Elementary. And when we talk to people in the community, especially if you spend any time on the Port Moody community groups, Port Moody, I really genuinely believe, is the best place to live in the Lower Mainland. But there's way too much division in our community on a number of issues. And so when I see the other mayor candidates, and I say this with genuine respect, but they're just very, very far apart, very polar opposite. And there's a lot of fighting and division and conflict, and sometimes toxicity. It's no secret the past 10 to 15 years in Port Moody politics. So I just really think there's room for a reasonable middle ground platform that really I think a majority of residents will support and have been waiting for. So I want to try to change the political culture in Port Moody so that we have less division.
Okay, fantastic. What is one issue you believe matters most to Port Moody residents? I'm going to talk to you about your 3 priorities, but right now I just want to know, when you are door knocking, what is the one thing that you are hearing on the doorsteps?
Yeah, it is a tie, but I won't sneak the second one in. So no, the one really for the past 15 years has been development and population growth, and people have different opinions on it. But yeah, it's the number one thing that comes up at the door. There is a close second that I'll get to in a bit. And this goes back to my first comment, right? There's so much division, and the options shouldn't be hardly any growth or way too much growth, right? There is a middle path, obviously. And so we've gone kind of back and forth like a game of tennis or ping pong between pro-development and anti-development candidates. And it's really defined our politics for 15 years. And I really think that needs to end. We need to come to a reasonable consensus, a middle ground. And I think Port Moody residents are weary of the fight and the division on this issue, and I think a majority of them are ready for a reasonable compromise, a middle ground that builds new housing, really crucial for our local economy, crucial for our city budget in the long run, that we grow our local economy and our tax base, but also that doesn't risk losing what makes Port Moody so special and why we all want to live there.
So that leads me into, if you are elected, what are your top 3 priorities for Port Moody?
So reaching that middle ground consensus on development, I really think it's like, I don't think I'm overstating it. It is crucial for the fabric of our community, for neighbors to neighbors, community groups. Like, we want to stop arguing, fighting about the level of development and population growth. And I think the middle ground, a reasonable middle ground, will do that. And so on that issue, that's why I don't take donations from real estate developers. I am not an anti-development candidate. But in Port Moody, often the dialogue is about, oh, you took money from a developer, this is why you're doing this. And so I believe it genuinely is unethical for political candidates to be taking like a large amount of money from real estate developers who have the number one financial interest in the business of the city. I do think that's unethical. I want to be clear, that's not the developer's fault. They're playing by the rules. They're allowed for their executives, owners, their wives, the staff or their husbands to donate and max donate, but that ends up skewing the process. And so I'm going to have great relationships with the development community, but they're going to know that nobody owns me. I'm going to do what's best for the community first, but we're going to have the right levels of development for Port Moody. Second one is traffic. So, like I said, it's really tied at the door when I'm door knocking. It's the pace of development and population growth, but then right beside it is traffic. So people are just sick and tired of being stuck in traffic, especially in rush hour in St. John's and Murray Street. Right. They're just done with it. And the argument that we should keep traffic bad, I just think is a really backwards way to look at it. Mm-hmm. So we have an amazing SkyTrain system. We have amazing bus service. I will note, though, some residents want a few more bus routes. That is important. So we have great public transportation, but we have not upgraded our road infrastructure. And I know that at City Hall, and I don't mean staff or any one particular mayor or councillor, but there is some groupthink going on there that we should just leave traffic or there's nothing we can do, and it's just not true. And I want to break through that and let residents know when you're sitting in traffic, no, there is a better way of doing this. So the majority of St. John's, I encourage everyone listening, the next time you drive from east to west on St. John's, starting at the end of Barnett Highway and College Park and going all the way to Ioko, take a look on your right-hand side. The majority of the distance from Barnett all the way to Ioko, there already is a third lane on St. John's. There's just no white line. So it'll be parking or it'll be vacant. There's a few areas where we'll have to do some work. And I want to be clear, we're going to leave the bike path, the multi-use path, completely intact and functioning. It'll have to be moved in a couple of places, but very low cost in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, just encourage everyone, look at how much of St. John's already has the third lane. The lines just aren't painted. So it's completely feasible. The key, though, is the bottleneck is Ioko. And so we have to add a fourth lane to the bridge. Again, next time you drive down it, look in the middle. There's a big meridian right in the middle. We can get rid of that. We can extend the bridge a little bit. We can have 4 lanes going east, so it's 2 dedicated lanes going to Ioko, 2 going through to Coquitlam, and that will completely fix St. John's. We'll be living in a different world in terms of traffic, and I cannot wait to do it. The last priority, not least, but the third, I should say, is families. So we've had a ton of young families move to Port Moody the past number of years. It's really neat. It's such a challenging time to buy housing and have kids, but we're seeing so many young families in Port Moody. And so when I talk to that part of our community, the 2 big things that come up every time is the shortage of daycare spots. Like I've heard horror stories where people's work has been impacted. They had to go back later, like real stress on young families in Port Moody. So I have a really simple solution for that. Each time we have a new development, it's going to be mandated that there'll be a significant amount of space dedicated for daycare, and it'll include outdoor space. So we don't want to just cram our kids in some commercial space with no good outdoor playground. Right. So if we incorporate that into our developments from day one, it's absolutely feasible, more than reasonable to ask that of the developer building those projects, and they'll actually be happy to do it. It's a selling feature for them in their project. So it's a win-win-win across the board. We just need the leadership to do it. And the second point families bring up is recreation spots. So there's a real shortage in certain categories. So skating lessons is challenging to get into. Swimming lessons is probably the most challenging to get into. So we need to get really creative, maximize all our availability, and I give young families my word. One of my top priorities will be addressing the daycare shortage and making more spots in our recreation programs, because it shouldn't be stressful sending your child to daycare so that you can go to work. Right. You shouldn't be getting up at 7 a.m. and watching the clock until 8 a.m. on the Port Moody website to try to get into swimming lessons. Right. And I know we can do way better on both.
Mm-hmm. Housing is a major concern, as we know. How do we balance growth, affordability, and protect Port Moody's character?
Yeah. So for once, there's a bit of good news. Now, I say this with respect because we've had a bit of a downward trend in prices. Not huge, but significant enough. And so I say this with respect because some people bought in the last few years and they're either even or a little bit down on their mortgage. So it's a stressful time for some households, and I really, really respect that. Overall, though, I think most people would agree we needed a bit of an adjustment in our housing housing market. And so it's, again, for some households it's tough, and I really respect that. But overall, for the overall population in our society, it's good that prices have come down a little bit. And so I actually think it's perfect timing to look at our official community plan and say, okay, like prices are coming down. We don't have to go gangbusters like everyone was saying for so many years. That argument that if we don't just build, the sky will fall. Well, we've been building, and the prices have come down a bit. And so I think it's completely reasonable to go back into a bit of balance. Many residents, I'm concerned, don't even know. So the current mayor, and I say this again, utmost respect, but her vision for the city is to double our population in the coming years. That's a massive change to a city. And when I door knock, most residents don't even know that. So it's going to be key for me to raise awareness on that issue. I think that's incredibly important for people to know the current mayor's vision of the city. And I really think there's a much better middle path, because if we double our population, we genuinely risk changing Port Moody in a way that risks losing what makes it such a special place and why we all want to live there. So that's another key point as well.
What are your thoughts on density, development, infrastructure, and keeping up with the pace? I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about it, of course, a little bit ago with regards to growth, doubling the city population. And but what are your personal thoughts on density and development?
That was a great follow-up, because I want to make sure I have a balanced answer. So the other side of it is we absolutely need to continue to build more housing, right? So the large amount, and again, it's a tough time for some development companies as well, and I respect that as well, because there are partners in building new housing, right? But we built a ton of supply, especially in small and medium-sized condos, and the prices have come down in those segments. And so the stickiest part of the market, so my background's in economics, so when I say sticky, it just means certain prices come down more slowly than others. Right. So condos have come down significantly. Single-family homes in some areas, not all. Port Moody is a very desirable place to live, but single families come down in some areas. Townhouses are very sticky, and they've come down somewhat, but we need to build more townhouses. So, and this goes back to respecting young families in our community and having a path for them and a future for them and their family. If we're going to have the best community we can have, the most balanced community we can have, that is based around more townhouse units being built. So less high-rise, small units. We've built a lot of those in recent years, and a lot have been recently approved. So we have a lot more coming down the pipe, and that's fine. It makes sense to have that density around SkyTrain. But I think a real gap is we are not building near enough townhouses. And again, if you ask people, they understand it's going to be challenging to get to a single family home now. So the feasible plan is to get to a townhouse. But if we don't build them, they're just not there. And so, a lot of young families from Port Moody are considering moving to a place like Burke Mountain, where they've built a lot of townhouses. I don't want to see young families leave Port Moody. So a big part of that balance is to continue increasing density in all sectors, but really focus on building more townhouses.
Mm-hmm. What are your plans around community safety? Do you feel safe in Port Moody? Does your family feel safe? There's also the mental health aspect of that and emergency preparedness.
Yeah. So thankfully, there's been a lot of changes in public safety in the Lower Mainland in recent years. I think in Port Moody, we're very fortunate. We are experiencing some, don't get me wrong. And for those people, I'm sure there's one or more listening that have had a really awful experience in the past several years. And I really, really respect that. But I think thankfully, out of most suburbs and most cities throughout the Lower Mainland, we are experiencing less of the brunt of the changes in public safety, but we need to be vigilant. I think that's part. It's our geography. We're a little bit tucked out of the way. A ton of credit goes to the Port Moody Police. Right. We're also really fortunate. So not every city has a private police department. I have the utmost respect for the RCMP, and they do an amazing job working in so many communities. But we're very fortunate to have our own police department, because you can customize your service, your enforcement, how you manage things as a city. You can often act a little more quickly, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think a ton of credit goes to our police department. And I've been fortunate over the years to meet a lot of officers there. And we're just very fortunate. We need to be vigilant. And we just need to have our eyes open, right? We're doing okay in Port Moody, but we really need to have our eyes open and act quickly when things change or something happens. We don't want to be complacent.
Mm-hmm. We touched on traffic and transit and parking. this seems to be concerns of people that live here. What solutions would you champion?
Yeah, so I hear a lot of complaints about parking at the rec center and parking for Rocky Point Park.
Right.
And I hear people that say, Paul, like, we don't go to Rocky Point Park anymore because the parking's so bad.
Right.
And so if you're a young family and you have 1, 2, 3 kids, and everybody has those nice little
Totes.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And so you're pulling your wagon, you have your stuff. Like, with the utmost respect, it's not feasible to walk there from your house with 2, 3 kids and a bunch of stuff. So you need to be able to drive there if you want, right? Thankfully, SkyTrain is close as well, so a lot of residents will use that. But
Right.
we need people to be able to drive to Rocky Point Park and it not be a hassle and not be a deterrent to them enjoying what I think is the crown jewel of our community. So part of my traffic plan is on Murray. So the big bottleneck is the hairpin turn there, overpass / bridge, right, that comes down into Murray. And so that's a big infrastructure project. All of my plans are cost effective, so that's a big one. So I'm not going to say we're going to replace that right away because that's just a ton of money. And we've had too much increases in property taxes, so we have to be careful. What we can do is, right now, the second lane doesn't open up until the entrance to Klahani. So we can bring a second lane right from after the hairpin bridge all the way down to Klahani. And again, people drive by, it's almost overwhelmingly already there. We do not have to change the sidewalk. You just put a white checkered or intermittent line down the middle, right? And so what that will do is that will maximize the outflow out of the hairpin bridge, and that's the absolute most we can do. And it, in my humble opinion, should have been done a long time ago. It's just simple stuff. So you maximize that, and then the backup on Clark will be way less. It's not going to be perfect. We're not all going to be doing 50 Port Moody Police, but we're not all going to be doing 60 in rush hour. But it's going to be drastically better. And then the reason I bring that up is so I only want the additional lane on St. John's and the additional lane on Murray to be open during rush hour for 2 to 3 hours tops, right? We don't want to turn our city into a speedway, right? We want to encourage walkability, using bikes, etc., right? And so many alternative forms of transportation. So it's only during rush hour. The rest of the time, it'll be increased parking. So we'll actually have a bunch more parking on Murray Street for Rocky Point Park. So that's a really short-term, great solution. In the long run, I think we need to look at, and again, this is expensive, so we have to cost it out. I'm really committed to making sure our property tax increases do not continue the way they have been. But in the long run, we need either more underground parking or something like that at both Rocky Point and the rec center. We can't leave it as the status quo.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We're going to change gears a little bit. We're going to talk about yourself. What's your leadership style?
I really believe in being like super, super positive, but still being real, and I think there's a balance to be struck there. So it's funny, when I'm looking to work with someone or if I'm working for a client hiring people, kind of my criteria is really, really positive attitude, but open to input as well. So I really believe in humility. So, I think that lends to a really collaborative approach, but I really do believe in leadership, right? So when you look at my platform, I'm saying I have clear policies, right? And I have clear solutions that I've researched and costed and I'm really confident in. I wouldn't put them out there otherwise. And so I believe in leadership up front, having a great vision, but really double checking it, going through the process, making sure your vision is good, articulating it really well, but then from there, working together. And so, I'm really excited because I really think my platform will stand out in this election, and I think it's going to resonate with Port Moody residents. And so, I'm excited to do that. I hope I can earn their support. And then if elected, I can't wait to work collaboratively with council to not just get my platform moved forward, but also the platform of council members as well. We need to work together.
Mm-hmm. Great. And what is one thing that people don't know about you?
That's a good question. Probably that I'm a musician. So I've been in business for a long time, and I've done politics, and I'm huge into sports, and lots of people will know that. I'm a musician. So my dad is an amazing musician. He has a degree in music performance from a big university, and so he was a teacher in ST 43 for 44 consecutive school years. Remarkable guy, and so he got me into music at a young age. So my main instrument is drums. I play a little bit of guitar, guitar, I sing a little bit, usually backup, not lead, and I've led all types of bands. And so believe it or not, we just bought both of our kids, our 4-year-old and our 2-year-old, or not matching, but drum sets each for Christmas. So I apologize
to the neighbors.
Yes, I apologize to the neighbors. But when they're jamming at the talent show at at Golden Spike Days one day, it was worth the racket down the street. So
I do want you to answer these last couple of questions, but I need some shorter answers if you don't mind. Residents sometimes feel disconnected and from municipal politics. How are you going to improve transparency and public engagement?
Yeah. So I don't know if everyone knows this. It's fairly common knowledge, but maybe not everyone. So the NDP, provincial NDP, and I don't say this with a connotation or even as a criticism, just this is the fact. So the provincial NDP in some of their more recent housing legislation removed the necessity for public hearings. And so again, I believe in leadership, collaboration, and doing what's right. And so I'm going to bring back public hearings, just plain and simple, even if it's not required, whatever, right? When you're a mayor and council, you can still always do what's right. And so I don't think we should be hiding behind provincial legislation or federal legislation. If another level of government has made what, in my opinion, is a mistake on a democratic level, we just need to be leaders in that area. So yeah, I'd bring back public hearings and genuine open ones. There's been a lot of accusations of bias or people's voices not being heard. And so yeah, we just don't want that narrative in our community. I think public hearings are great, and I think the majority of council would support that. So I think we'd work together and get that done, and I think residents would be really happy.
Mm-hmm. And Paul, lastly, why should people vote for you?
Yeah, so I represent a very distinct vision from the other two candidates for mayor, and I have the utmost respect for both of them. But again, if you look at their policies, they're very, very far apart, right? So one candidate doesn't want to grow much at all. The other one, is again, respectfully, heavily backed, financially backed by the development community. And the development community is nothing wrong. They're allowed to donate, right? But I just think she's a little bit out of balance on that issue as a result. And so, her vision is to double the population of Port Moody. And so, when you talk to Port Moody residents, you won't find many people saying, hey, can't you wait to double our population? Like, man, I circled the rec center parking lot 3 times. I can't wait to double our population. It just doesn't make sense. I just don't see it. And so that's why we have to find that middle ground. Then on traffic, again, with respect, I don't think any other candidate is committed to fixing traffic in Port Moody. I think that's a very unique part of my platform, and I think that's crucial. I'm laser focused on families, daycare shortage, and shortage of recreation spots, and I live it every day. Like I literally was the guy getting up at 7 a.m. and clicking refresh to get my son into skating lessons, right? I think, I would be remiss if I didn't end on this as well. We didn't get into it, so we've had very significant property taxes in Port Moody the past 4 years. So when compound interest, when you compound it, it's 28% more expensive over 4 years. That's not sustainable, right? If you ask people in the community, very few people's income would have gone up by 28% over 4 years. Very few. So that means households and families in Port Moody are a bit worse off today financially than they were 4 years ago because of the burden being put on them by City Hall. And again, no, I'm not pointing that at staff or any particular, right? But that's just the reality. And so there's a lot of people concerned about property taxes, and I know there's opportunities for savings, efficiencies. You have to start with the right mindset, right? So I would never cut core services like police, fire, parks and recreation. But if you start with the mindset that we can't have this level of increase, you have a much better chance at not having it, right? And so I think that mindset is key. Those are kind of the key policies that set me apart. And I think my vision is really distinct, and the feedback has been fantastic so far, and I can't wait to meet more and more people. My goal is that my hand will hit every door in the entire community, including condo buildings when we're legally allowed to go in during the writ. And I can't wait to meet people, show them that I have a very distinct vision. And I'm really excited to earn their support.
And just your website, please.
Yes, it's www.paullambert.ca.
And thank you so much. Today we're talking to Paul Lambert, who is running for mayor of Port Moody. Remember, the election is in October the 17th in 2026. And if you want to make a difference, make sure that you vote. Paul's a leader, a collaborator, and is putting families first. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Cathy Cena with Tri-Cities Community Television. Until next time.